Welcome to the weekly S3 seminar series. Today we are going to delve into a controversial topic, the dilemma of modern Indians, distorted connection with the past. In this particular seminar, we will discuss 5 important points. Number 1, what are the current datelines and theories as far as our cultural traditions, their origin are concerned. Number 2, are the facts presented to us correct? How we can evaluate them? Number 3, we will take the help of genetic, geophysical, archeo-astronomical and cultural evidence to evaluate the contemporary historical narrations. Number 4, we will take a glance at the textbooks of history taught in the schools. And number 5, what is the role of modern educated Indians in this regard, what they can do to correct the situation and establish correct historical narration. We would begin with introduction of 2 Indologies. Basically, Indology is the academic study of history, culture, languages and literature of India. People who undertake such study, they are called as Indologists. 2 prominent Indologists of the British era are Thomas B. Macaulay and Max Muller. They both have profound influence on India. Whereas Thomas B. Macaulay has deep influence on the education system, Max Muller has profound influence on the history of India that is taught to us. Macaulay was a British poet, historian and politician. He wrote extensively on British history. He also had political office as secretary during war between 1839 and 1841. He was appointed by the Britishers to devise a suitable education system for India aimed at consolidating the control. His legacy is still visible in the present education system. Macaulay was of view that the Britishers should create a race in India that is Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinions, morals, and intellect. Max Muller was an Orientalist interested in the study of religions, particularly Sanskrit language and the Vedic literature. He was born in Germany but educated in Oxford, UK. Later he became UK citizen. He said that Vedas are worse than savage and India must be conquered again by education. Its religion is doomed. He wanted to engineer an Indian form of Christianity. He hoped that superstition and idolatry that he considered to be the main characteristic of Indian culture would disappear. He somehow persuaded the East India Company to allow him to undertake a critical edition of Rig Veda. He carried out this task for several years, but somehow he misinterpreted Vedic texts to make them look primitive and promote them as mythology. Max Muller is also the main architect of the Aryan Invasion Theory. According to the Aryan Invasion Theory, foreign Aryans conquered the native Indians between 1200 and 1500 BC. Natives mainly inhabited the Indus Valley region and they were part of the Indus Valley Civilization. The foreign Aryans who came from Central Asia, they were able to conquer the native Indians on account of their superior iron weapons and horses. The native Indians, they were driven towards the south, and possibly the present day South Indians are the native people of the Indus Valley Civilization. According to Max Muller, Rig Veda was composed in 1200 BC. The Aryan Invasion Theory implied that the Indian culture came from a foreign soil. All Indologists were not like them. Schopenhauer, who was a German philosopher known for his pessimism and philosophical clarity, had different opinion. According to him, the Sanskrit understanding of these Indologies was like that of young schoolboys. Similarly, Alfred North Whitehead, a British mathematician, logician, and philosopher, said, Vedanta is the most impressive metaphysics the human mind has conceived. Similarly, Voltaire, a French writer, historian, and philosopher of the 17th century, held differing views about India. Voltaire was famous for his wit, criticism of Christianity, the Roman Catholic Church, and at the same time he advocated freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and separation of church and the state. Voltaire was a frontrunner of liberal pluralism in his approach to history and non-European cultures. Since the days of the Industrial Revolution, the Eurocentric model was very prominent. The Europeans, they thought themselves as superior to other races. Recognizing the contributions of India to decimal system, concept of zero and infinity, and the binary number system, Voltaire once stated that everything has come down to us from the bank of Ganges. Pythagoras went to the Ganges to learn geometry. The views of the favorable Indologists were not supported by the East India Company. They basically favored Indologists like Macaulay and Max Muller, who had negative influence. The Vedic literature were denounced by the Indologists because of their Eurocentric superiority model. They had colonial point of view that all other continents, they were supposed to be colony of the Britishers on account of their superiority. This systematic and institutionalized negative propaganda by the Indologists had a very detrimental effect on the mind of the Indians. This systematic and institutionalized negative propaganda on our history and culture had tremendous effect on the perception of the masses. It was some kind of manipulative tactics to bring about psychological perception re-engineering. In fact, it's a well-documented fact that governments, they employ 4 steps to bring about a slow change of mass perception. It begins with demoralization. During this stage, which typically lasts 15 to 30 years, that is one generation, the moral fiber, integrity, and spirituality of the masses is put into question. Then the next phase is destabilization, which takes 2 to 5 years. The purpose of this step is to change the status quo, particularly the region's economy, foreign relations, defense, and other means. Then the next phase, which lasts few weeks, is the crisis. So this is a very major step which involves some kind of revolutionary change. And then this is followed in the end by the 4th step, that is normalization, which takes 10 to 20 years. So as a result of these 4 steps, in about 2 generations, the perception of the whole set of masses changes. So this strategy was applied by the East India Company to gradually change the perception of the masses and make them develop an inferiority complex about own culture. As a result of this, people started treating their own historical descriptions as mythology. Historical figures, they were regarded as fictional. Ramayana and Mahabharata came to be regarded as stories. Every custom and tradition came to be regarded as superstition. That this strategy is very successful can be known by the fact that we are very fond of using mythology for everything of our history. Take the example of Amar Chitra Katha. Its front page declares that all the contents are nothing but myth, fictional. No one can deny the fact that the outcome of the institutionalized propaganda which has spanned for over 1.5 centuries, is that there has been a considerable erosion of the cultural, moral, and spiritual values of Indians. However, if we have to present the alternate point of view, we should have strong scientific evidence. This part we are going to present some of the important scientific evidence in correcting the situation. Before we go further, let's just review the different date-related abbreviations which we'll encounter when we study the scientific literature. We are all very much familiar with AD and BC, that is Anno Domini and before Christ. Alternate terminologies are CE, current era, and BCE, before current era, to express the dates without specifically referring to Christianity. Then there is a terminology BP, before the present. This uses 1950 year as the reference. Similarly, there is the unit of KA, that is kilo annum, which means 1000 years. So basically for kilo annum, the reference year is 2000. According to the mainstream history, the farming began in 6000 BCE, that is close to about 8000 years ago. And there are evidence from Mehrgarh site. The Harappan cities, they are dated to be flourishing in between 2700 and 1900 BC. The Rig Veda is dated to be composed between 1500 and 1000 BCE. That is after Aryans, they came to India, they defeated the citizens of the Harappan cities and they settled down here and slowly composed the Rig Veda and other literature. Similarly, based on the estimations of Max Muller, the dates for various famous literature in our spiritual culture, they are considered to be in between 500 BC and 500 CE. When we talk of Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are declared to be composed between 500 BC and 400 CE. Historians are silent on when these wars were actually fought. They only talk of when these literature they were composed. On the other hand, Vedic scholars, they have a different version. According to Vedic scholars, the war of Mahabharata occurred about 5000 years ago, that is 3000 BC. At this stage, we can even talk of Ramayana. However, right now we are not bringing Ramayana into question. We'll consider it later. If we use the Vedic dateline, then many people will just disbelieve. According to Mahabharata, all the Vedic literature was composed and put in a written form in the years just after the war, just at the dawn of the present Iron Age, which is the Kali Yuga. According to Surya Siddhant and also according to the estimations of Aryabhat, the present age began in the year 3102 BCE. The war of Mahabharata was fought 37 years before the beginning of the present age of Kali Yuga. Based on that, the date of Mahabharata war is supposed to be 3139 BCE. Every educated Indian, he has several questions in mind when we talk about our historical legacy. First of all, the question comes that is Mahabharata fact or fantasy? Is it just a story? If it's not a story, is there any scientific proof? Then the next question comes, are we descendants of invaders? Because we have been taught right from beginning that we are Aryans. And this also gives a racial angle. If the North Indians are Aryans, the South Indians are Dravidas. Then the next question comes, if we are not from the same ancestors who were residing in the Indus Valley, who were those people? If they were not our forefathers, where are they now? Then is there any scientific evaluation of the Aryan Invasion Theory available? So in this particular video, we'll consider all these questions. We have done a scientific evaluation of the mainstream historical narrations. As far as the Aryan Invasion Theory is concerned, no one has asked any proof to Max Muller. All his concepts about the Aryan invasion and then the falling of the Harappan civilization, they were totally speculative in nature. However, we have done a scientific evaluation of the facts based on 5 points. Number 1, geophysical evaluation of the Saraswati Ghaggar paleo channels. Most of the Harappan cities, they were located in between the Indus River and the now extinct Saraswati River. So a lot of studies they have been done on the paleo channels. Paleo channels means the underground streams of those ancient rivers. They have been studied and they have been traced. Then we have looked into the evidence of genetic analysis. At the time of Aryan Invasion Theory, there was no availability of this scientific knowledge. Then we have also looked at archeo-astronomy, then cultural continuity and certain other miscellaneous facts. We will go through each of these points one by one. The first scientific evidence is related to the geophysical study of Saraswati Ghaggar paleo channels. So here in this map, we are showing the dried bed of Saraswati River and other tributaries and main rivers like Indus. The cities of the Harappan civilization, they flourish in this particular region. This study has recently been published in the Episodes Journal of International Geosciences, a reputed journal. Past studies, they were projecting that the Saraswati River dried around 1900 BCE. But this particular study, it tells that the date of drying of Saraswati River is much earlier. Based on the investigations, it projects that the drying of the Saraswati River took place in between 15,000 years to 5,000 years. This pushes the date of drying of Saraswati River to 3000 BC at one extreme and 13,000 BCE on the other. Another related study can be found in Nature scientific reports. According to this study, the estimated time of disappearance of the river Saraswati is projected to lie between 9,000 and 4,500 years. That is in between 2500 BC and 7000 BC. There is definitely a variation of the dates, but if we take the conservative estimates, then one thing is clear that Saraswati River dried at least prior to 2500 BCE, and this fact is enough to demolish the Aryan Invasion Theory. If we go by the Aryan Invasion Theory, when the Aryans landed in India in between 1500 and 1200 BC, river Saraswati was no longer flowing. However, Vedic literatures, they repeatedly cite Saraswati River. In Rig Veda alone, Saraswati River has been cited at least 50 times. This clearly implies that Vedas were compiled much earlier than 1500 to 1000 BC as put forward by the Aryan Invasion Theory. This establishes that Aryans were the indigenous people and most likely inhabitants of the Indus Valley Civilization itself. Earlier, it was thought that if it's not the invasion, then possibly drying up of Saraswati River was the main cause of collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization. However, new studies, they have thrown light that the main reason for collapse of the civilization was the climatic change induced droughts. This particular study, recently published in the Journal of Quaternary Science, it clearly tells that there was a drought in the period 2100 to 2300 BC. So whatever the cause of collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization, it is clear that the Aryan Invasion Theory and the associated dateline, they are debunked. The next evidence is the evidence of genetic analysis. Recently, a study has been published in the reputed Journal of Cell. So according to this study, which was conducted on the mortal remains from Rakhigarhi site, which is a major Harappan site, it came out we are basically the descendants of the Harappan people. Harappan people are no different from the so-called Aryans. Clearly, the genome from the Indus Valley Civilization is from a population that is the largest source of the present-day South Asians. Hence, the modern-day Indians, they are basically descendants of the Harappan people. The next evidence will be archeo-astronomy. Archeo-astronomy is a branch of science which combines astronomy with archaeology so as to uncover history. Basically, in Mahabharata, the compiler Vedvyas has given the dates in terms of the map of the sky, in terms of the position of various constellations and various planetary systems. So all those details, they are available in Mahabharata. Based on those details, Professor B.N. Narhari Achar of the University of Memphis, US, he has done an elaborate study using planetarium software. The planetarium software enables obtaining the map of the sky at any earlier date. Based on the simulations from the planetarium software, Professor Achar arrives at a date of 3000 BC on an approximate basis for the events of Mahabharata. This matches very well with the year of 3102 BC as per Surya Siddhant and Aryabhat. I have also come across one more study published in the Indian Journal of History of Sciences in the year 2017. It gives a number of probable dates. These dates include the year 3102 BCE also, but it also includes years like 3140 BCE and 1793 BCE. Essentially, it is possible that some events or their combinations, they may have occurred a number of times. That's why this method relies on elimination. So it's very important that the researcher, he has very good command on Mahabharata itself. At least one thing is clear from these studies, that Mahabharata is not any fiction. The studies show that the events which have been described can be corroborated. Next, we see the evidence of cultural continuity. The Harappan tradition of women wearing bangles till the shoulders is still alive at many places across India. This clearly points towards cultural continuity. There are a number of tribes who follow this tradition. One of the tribes is the Banjara tribe, who very much follow this tradition till date. In addition, the discovery of the artifacts bearing the symbols of swastika, Om, and Shivlingas, they also point to cultural continuity only. Going further, we find that all the descriptions which are there in Mahabharata, in Srimad Bhagavatam, including the places, they are still there. Now we will evaluate the Aryan Invasion Theory in terms of some logical evidences. First of all, let's try to understand what is the meaning of the term Aryan. The term Aryan is derived from the Sanskrit word Arya. The literal meaning of the word Arya is civilized, a person who believes in the spiritual value of life. It is never used in a racial sense. Aryan Invasion Theory, on the other hand, uses the term in a racial manner, that it has to do something with skin. The term Dravida is similar to Odia and Gaudiya. Gaudiya means the devotees of Lord residing in Bengal. Odia means the devotees residing in Odisha. Similarly, the devotees of South, they are called as Dravida. Later on, the term Aryan was misused by Germans and the Nazis under Hitler to create racial atrocities. The statement that racially white or light-skinned Aryans, they pushed the darker natives of the Harappan settlements southwards, this does not hold much ground. In fact, the color has never been a basis of the spiritual knowledge of India. Had this been the fact, then the people of the North India would not have liked the dark-skinned deities Lord Rama, Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu. In general, whether North India or South India, the average skin color is something like yellowish and brownish in nature, somewhat dusky complexion. However, there are exceptions in the Indian subcontinent. We can have extremely fair and Hispanic or European looks on one hand, and on the other hand, the skin color might vary to very dark on lines of the African continent. And these variations, they are found in North India as well as South India. So there is nothing like the fact that North Indians are having fairer complexion and South Indians are having very dark complexions. Of course, this happens that if we move towards equator, then owing to the direct exposure to sun rays, there is some tanning. To say that the South Indian traditions, they are different from the North Indian traditions, that's also a bit absurd. If that had been the case, then the South India would not have followed the Vedic traditions. In fact, South India boasts of more authentic Vedic culture and tradition in the form of deity worship, in the form of dressing, and in terms of the respect to cow. All across India, right from north to south, east to west, the cow dung is considered pure and holy. Cow is worshipped. This is the greatest example of the uniform prevalence of Vedic culture all across the Indian subcontinent. There has been no evidence of any foreign invasion. In those days, population migration on account of flooding and droughts, that was very common, and this has been mentioned at several places in the Vedic scriptures. There is no mention of any foreign Aryan homeland in any of the Vedic literatures covering the 4 Vedas, 108 Upanishads, 18 Puranas and the 2 Itihasas. All the Vedic scriptures, they repeatedly cite the existing mountains, places and rivers of India only. Had the Aryans migrated from some other land, they would have definitely made some references at least to the rivers, mountains, places of those lands. So this contradicts the proposition that the Aryans, they came from some foreign soil. There is a direct reference to the cities of Harappan sites at several places in the Vedic literature. In fact, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are instances of reference to those cities. For example, in Canto 10, there is instance that the group of the friends of Lord Krishna and his parents, they visited Ambika forest, which lies close to a Harappan site. Lastly, on one hand, there is vast literature comprising of the Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas and Itihas. On the other hand, there are about more than 2,500 archaeological sites which have been discovered, and apparently there is no documentation associated with them. This leads to something called as false paradox. Essentially, the literature and the artifacts, they must point to one and the same civilization. Cultural continuity clearly points to the fact that the Indus Valley settlements, they were indeed Vedic civilizations and not otherwise. The Aryan Invasion Theory does not have very strong historical, cultural, scientific or archaeological evidences. It has been consistently debunked by international researchers in the last 30 years. The Aryan Invasion Theory was totally speculative, and it emerged from mental concoction of Max Muller. When proposed, science did not have the benefit of understanding genes, human migration traits, and many other scientific techniques which we have covered so far. So this is the older textbook for middle school history. Now this specifically mentions about the Aryan Invasion Theory. It mentions the year 1500 BC, and that the fall of the Harappan culture was a sad event. So the Aryans who came afterwards knew nothing of the city life, and then the cities were destroyed because of the invasion and because of the floods and other epidemics. Next, we see the present day NCERT book for class 6. Now, one good thing is that they have not used the term Aryan invasion here, but indirectly they are referring to something like the Sioux. Now, the statement in the book says that sometimes the people who composed of the hymns described themselves as Aryas and called their opponents as Das or the Sioux. These were the people who did not perform the sacrifices and probably spoke different languages. Later, the term Dasa and the feminine Dasi came to mean slave. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. So this is very ridiculous that the word the Sioux has been taken and its meaning distorted. The Sioux, as we know, it means plunderer. And how come the Sioux is being mixed with Das, and the effort is made that there was the custom of slavery. However, there is no mention of any slavery system in the Indian context. Let us also have a look at class 12 history book. So here the evidence of invasion is given in this form, that both the arguments in favor of invasion and against invasion are given in this fashion. However, the focus is to take the reader towards some kind of invasion by Aryans. So far in this video we have covered the description of the war of Mahabharat, and we have shown a number of evidences to prove its authenticity. Now if we go further down the line and talk of Ramayana, is there any archaeological evidence of Ramayana, and when the incident of Ramayana happened? Again, there are different versions, but according to the Vedic literature, the incidents of Ramayana happened at least 869,000 years ago. You may again ask that how is it possible? Because if we go by the mainstream history, then at that particular time Homo sapiens were not there. We are working towards gathering similar kind of evidences for the Ramayana period also, and soon we will come out with a video similar to this one. All of you who wish to be part of our efforts in these studies can let us know, and we could include you also as part of our investigations. It is hoped that the viewers are very much convinced with the facts presented in the previous sections. If you are convinced, the next question which comes to our mind is that what should be our actions? How we can correct the situation? What should be our responsibility? We can take a cue from the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared in India over 500 years ago. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that if we are born in India, we are very fortunate. It is then our responsibility to first learn thoroughly our Vedic teachings, and then we should present it to the world, and in this way we do good for all. In order to connect with our spiritual traditions, it's very important that we read the Vedic literature from authentic sources. We should not fall prey to distorted commentaries. Already there have been a lot of deterioration on account of the misinterpretations by the European Vedic scholars. Here, Bhagavad Gita, as it is translated by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who hails from same spiritual tradition and lineage as that of Vedvyas, is the best solution. It is written in very easy to understand form. It is available in English and all major Indian languages. If we read Bhagavad Gita, we'll get an essence of the spirituality of the Vedic literatures. If we are done with Bhagavad Gita, then we should start reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the most important of the 18 Puranas of our Vedic system. It contains a lot of information, not just about spirituality, but also about culture, tradition, political system, economic system, and so many aspects of the Vedic life and the associated traditions. If we read Srimad Bhagavatam, it also contains excerpts from other Puranas, Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata. It is a complete encyclopedia in itself. In the spiritual circles, whereas Bhagavad Gita is regarded as equivalent of the bachelor's degree, Srimad Bhagavatam is regarded as the master's degree. Alongside reading the important books, we should also practice spirituality at our home. The Vedic literatures, they have prescribed transcendental sound vibration based meditation, the mantra meditation for this particular age. In fact, in the coming seminars, we will cover in detail how to do this kind of mantra meditation and connect spiritually. We sincerely hope that the seminar was useful to you. If you want to connect with our group, please let us know. If you want to be part of the future projects in this regard, then also you can be in touch with us. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.